Hello and a warm welcome to a brand new video on my channel. Today I'm bringing you part 5 of the story MHA and the Mystery of Quirks. I really hope you enjoy it. If you do, please drop a like, subscribe, and don't forget to share my channel with your friends. I won't beat around the bush any longer, let's jump straight into the story.
No, you are not a storage bank for my quirks. I also think I can give you and steal abilities, but your quirk 1-for-1 is stronger than I thought. Giving the abilities is no problem. But the moment I gave you your first quirk, I noticed something very interesting. If you want, I can explain it to you in more detail. It might take a little longer because it's a bit complicated, says Inko Shigaraki. When Izuka hears this, she raises an eyebrow and her curiosity bursts out like a waterfall. Questions and theories tumble from her mouth faster than she can keep up. For a second it even seems like a quirk in itself that Izuka manages to speak so fast and so unclearly that even Inko, with several perception-enhancing quirks, can't quite parse the chatter and muttering. Okay, I can explain it to you, but calm down, you're talking too fast. So, to explain what I perceived, your ability, 1-for-1, is the quirk to use other quirks and to outsource them. My quirk does the same and stores them. But the exact way your quirk has a different space where those quirks can go is slightly different from mine. It's almost identical, but not completely. Your quirk can block mine. Your quirk also seems, as we've already seen, to be able to analyze the quirks that are inside it. I assume you can do more with the abilities you possess than we currently think. But anyway, you can easily block my ability if you don't want me to access it. Whether this is due to the similarity between all-for-one and 1-for-1, I can't say. But basically your quirk is like a modification of mine in a very specific area. If you imagine my quirk as the ability to steal abilities and put them on a shelf, then imagine that the door to the room where that shelf stands inside me is in a fixed place and I can lock and open that door as I like, put things in and take them out. I can mentally enter that room and examine and organize the quirks I have there, but I can't control or scan them the way you can. You, on the other hand, can completely modify the door, change it and move it to other places. Not only can you lock your door so I can't break in and steal a quirk, you can also reinforce or alter the door. And I suspect that's mainly because my ability is really designed to steal abilities that reside in a physical body. You only have the 1-for-1 quirk inside your body and I can't steal that because it's too similar to my own, that just doesn't work. So I can't describe it better, but I can touch your quirk. I can enter it, but I can't grasp it. Mentally you can think of it like a hand. I can't get a grip on your quirk. I can touch it, but it slips away if I try to steal it. And no, I haven't actively tried to take it, but I can sense that it would evade me if I tried. So don't worry. Boom boom boy, whatever happened between you and him, he can't hurt you again. I won't allow it, and if he wants to hurt you, he'll have to go through me. And believe me, unless he's as strong as All Might, that won't be easy for him. Depending on what he did, if he seriously injured you, I'll probably arrange a little accident for him. Who knows, maybe you'll wake up with a very similar quirk yourself overnight. Who knows, one thing can lead to another, and you never know if a thug will get attacked spontaneously or if a car will run him over. Inko says with a devilish smile on her lips, a smile that would freeze the blood of anyone standing on the wrong side of it. On Izuka, however, the effect is the opposite. It's calming, even though she knows it should probably unsettle her. Okay, I'll tell you what happened if you, in turn, hold back and let me finish. I can't really say how I feel about Katsuki Bakugo, Izuka Midoriya says, meeting her mother's gaze and studying the pair of red eyes opposite her. You seem serious about that. Fine. I promise I won't kill Katsuki Bakugo, at least not for the time being, says Inko Shigaraki, her villainous instinct still visible even though she's much tamer now than she used to be. It's not hard for Izuka to imagine how Inko would have reacted back when she still fully embraced being all-for-one. Finding the right words proves harder than expected, as it always had been, but it must be done if this family is to become whole again and if anything is to change. The memories themselves feel heavy and sharp like blades, but no tears fall, as if there are none left. It's incredibly difficult for Izuka to find the right words. Fuck, why does it have to be so hard to just open your mouth and talk? Izuka thinks, trying to hold herself together, and she sees her hands begin to tremble. It started like this: the quirk you called 1-for-1 is useless because I need someone to give me quirks. That's why I was almost quirkless, less than a completely useless person. But Bakugo still ignored me even as a child. Ever since it came out that I didn't have a really useful quirk, since I was 4 years old, we drifted apart and talked less and less, Izuka says, taking a moment to compose herself and breathe. It's harder to talk about than I thought, but okay, it's getting a bit better. Where was I? Right. Katsuki Bakugo, or as everyone else called him, the oh-so-great hero. They always assumed he'd achieve greatness because he has a cool, flashy quirk. A quirk that supposedly makes him a good pro-hero. Always the praise for the smallest things. He never had to try hard for anything. And then all those praises, Izuka says, instinctively running her fingers through her hair. Her hands clench so hard her knuckles stand out. She realizes what she's doing and stops. A thin trickle of blood runs from her head, and she hardly notices, as if it's routine. The casual way she wipes the drop away tells Inko Shigaraki more than 1,000 words. I can't hear it anymore, the same words, the same praise, and the same arrogant jerk who thinks his quirk makes him superior. All the injuries he causes, the cuts, the debris his explosions fling at lethal speed, and nobody cares because they think he will be a great hero. That has inflated his ego to the size of this fucking city, Izuka Midoriya says, grinding her teeth in anger at a society that truly thinks raising a hero like Bakugo is a good idea. Someone with massive aggression problems who uses his explosions without concern for others. It seems almost ridiculous how many serious assaults, broken bones and other crimes a boy aspiring to be a superhero can commit just because he has a cool quirk. What does Bakugo, the friendly neighborhood terrorist, have to do with your problems? If you don't see him often, that should be a good thing, Inko says, trying to keep her composure and not think the worst. What happened is that I, a useless, helpless little girl, was an excellent punching bag for him and his friends. No matter what I said or did, I took more hits. And the teachers, they try somewhat to curb quirk use in class, but in the end they just ignore it. They look away while Bakugo turns me into a punching bag, Izuka says, surprisingly aggressive, her eyes starting to glow faintly red. That bastard who sent you to the hospital more times than I can count. Wait, he'll really regret putting his hands on my child, Inko Shigaraki says, murder lust radiating from her in waves, as if she could easily return to her life as a supervillain to protect her family. I must ask you to keep your anger in check, otherwise you might make decisions you'll regret, Lady Shigaraki, Kurogiri says. I also believe Katsuki Bakugo must be punished for injuring my daughter. But we must do it the right way, not in a villainous manner, says Hisashi Midoriya, who until recently had been completely silent. When Inko rises from the sofa and moves to the door, something else pulls her attention away from her anger, something none of them in the room expected. What the hell is that noise? Inko says as her gaze snaps to the holographic two-dimensional broadcast of the news anchor, focused on the projector. Hearing this, Izuka frowns slightly and the red sparkles in her eyes fade as she reaches for the remote and turns the volume up. It's a revolutionary idea, but the Hero Association and some pro-heroes have already spoken out against it. That hasn't stopped the rise of the Horizon Corporation one bit. That was the report on Horizon Corporation and how it's creating a whole new industry. Bridget, what do you think of Horizon Corporation? The blonde anchor asks. I think it's so simple and brilliant that it makes me wonder why no one thought of it earlier. And I believe it's due to demonizing certain quirks and glorifying others. We say one quirk is better than another, that cool, glittering abilities like All Mights are the best in the world, when actually it's how you use those powers that matters, not the power itself. I admit abilities affect the psyche and vice versa. We call them quirks for a reason. A quirk is an oddity or trait and is closely tied to personality. So it isn't only genetics that determine how a quirk develops, but who you become over the years. That's why the idea of Horizon Corporation should have come earlier. It's simple but effective. Advise people with quirks on how to use them, no matter how weak or strange. Not in terms of good or evil, but purely objectively. Helping someone find a use for their quirk, that's real gold, says the reporter, Bridget. Don't you think it's a bit revolutionary to claim that every quirk can be used for good and evil? The blonde anchor asks. No, I don't think so. I think that classification of good and evil is what caused the problem in the first place. It's a self-reinforcing effect, and I don't say that lightly. I've studied it. The rise of pro-heroes actually increased the crime rate. It's not the right approach to restrict quirk use simply because you fear chaos. If someone has a quirk, claiming they have no right to use it publicly is nonsense. I think quirks should not be seen as weapons per se. We would never say a weapon is evil. A weapon can't harm without the will to harm. So viewing quirks as neutral and focusing on education and social integration makes sense. If you have a quirk that can turn things to ash, sure, it could kill people, or it could be used to destroy plastic waste and encourage regrowth. So it's justified to treat quirks neutrally. It comes down to upbringing and how people are taught, Bridget concludes. Don't you think it's maybe a bit risky to keep giving villains and criminals a second chance, says the news anchor. Why do you say, villains and criminals, as if it were predetermined which path someone will take in life depending on whether they have a good or a bad quirk, replies the news anchor Bridget, rubbing her face in frustration and snorting. But you never know what those people will do with their quirks, especially people with villainous quirks. It's so tempting to have a villain-like quirk. It can so easily slide toward villainy, the male anchor tries to argue, though it's obvious he's at a loss for words. You don't seriously want to tell me you believe every person in this world has a predetermined path? Do you think someone is evil just because they have a quirk that can kill? That's like saying the child of a murderer is responsible for what the parents did. That makes no sense. It's complete bullshit, the female anchor snaps, her face flushing red with anger. No. I wouldn't say a criminal's child is automatically guilty of the parents' crimes, but if they're raised badly, it's harder to save that child from hostility toward heroes or the hero system, the male anchor replies. So you want to say the hero system is infallible and heroes with cool powers are untouchable and can never make mistakes? So by your logic I'm a supervillain now because I might have the potential to kill people. That's utterly idiotic. Any quirk can be used to advance science, to push the world forward. It doesn't always have to be divided into good and evil. This is just more fuel for the self-reinforcing system, the endless loop where heroes are the ideals while both heroes' crimes and the suffering of people who didn't choose their quirks are ignored. My goodness, it's called a quirk for a reason. It literally means trait or characteristic. We say someone has quirks. The name already implies that psychology, upbringing, and quirk interact. Anyone with half a clue about quirks knows it makes no sense to call quirks fundamentally good or evil. Someone isn't born evil. It's like calling a gun evil, nonsense. A gun lies there, whether someone carries a quirk that produces poison is no different from carrying a pistol. Do you see people on the street with pistols and immediately get angry? No, it makes no sense to say a person becomes a serial killer just by touching a gun. Likewise, it makes no sense to say I'm a serial killer because I could poison someone, the news anchor says, visibly angrier than before. A few seconds of silence follow, and the woman glances slightly off camera. Are you serious? You want me to sit here and not voice my opinion? You threaten to fire me just because I won't read a script that slanders a corporation trying to revolutionize the world. What's wrong with not praising the hero system? Revolution doesn't have to mean destruction. Wanting to improve the world in a slightly more radical way isn't automatically evil. Because this brave woman might actually change the world with nothing more than a brilliant mind and a new concept, am I supposed to shut up and mouth the usual talking points? Keep repeating the typical news lines. What's missing now is that they turn off the camera, that would help. And next they'll say I went on a rampage because I have a dangerous quirk and therefore must have aggression problems. Is there no one who questions this system? Does no one find it a stupid idea to keep everything locked in the status quo? She fumes, and a thin green mist flows from her mouth. But it's not only her words, it's the way she fires back with sharp, fearless arguments, as if she doesn't care about losing her job. Save your breath. I don't need a job where I just look pretty and read a script. Any idiot can do that. Look pretty, read a script, and give the news people want. I became a news anchor to spread truth, not to read propaganda. I'm sick of it. If you old men are too lazy to change the world, I'll go to Horizon and learn how to use my quirk for society. It's a whole new industry, a whole new opportunity, and I'm not so arrogant as to call anything new inherently evil, the news anchor declares, and her microphone is cut. Those are the last words Izuka, Inko, Kurogiri and Hisashi Midoriya hear from the anchor before the broadcast cuts to commercial. For a moment silence fell over the Midoriya household as the significance of the new industry and the Horizon Corporation sank in. It did not take long before Inko Shigaraki broke the silence with a surprised exhale. In her eyes there was only one person who could have come up with such a revolutionary idea, someone who thinks in a way so different from everyone else. And at the same time that person was, to Inko, the one who deserved justice the most, an innocent young woman whose childhood had been stolen. Why the hell did it all come to this, that I became what I feared? Inko Shigaraki wondered as the image of a smiling, frail boy flashed through her mind. Yoichi Shigaraki. Why did I keep chasing more power over and over? And why did this spiral of mistakes just keep going? Why did I think it was a good idea to create life only to exploit it? I really am the worst mother in the history of this world, Inko thought as her whole world seemed to be turning upside down. And just as Inko wondered how her brother Yoichi would feel, that strange sensation began, as if one for one and all for one, those two quirks that have danced around each other for decades, were somehow vibrating together in an unnatural way, regardless of distance, falling into a kind of harmony, as if a connection existed. The feeling of change traveled through that connection all the way to Yoichi Shigaraki. Okay, what is that right now? This is weird. Yoichi Shigaraki asked himself as his light green eyes swept the strange landscape around him. It was a bleak place, endlessly black, with scattered multicolored flashes of light flickering through the void. It was a place where nothing really exists. It was the vestige world, a world where the echoes of the users of One for One can spend their time. And even though Yoichi could claim, in theory, that he had been trapped in that place for 200 years, there was something about it that made time blur. Something that made time itself feel irrelevant. Say what do you mean, something has changed, first user, the sixth user of One for One asked. I can't say exactly, but that insatiable hunger to rule the world, to take over and hoard more quirks, it's weaker. The urge is still there, but it feels different, weaker, much weaker, Yoichi answered. So you're saying now, first user, that Inko doesn't crave world domination as much as before. What's that supposed to mean? Inko wouldn't just stop. The sixth user replied, surprised. But before Yoichi could answer again, the world around them seemed to tremble. The air suddenly felt heavier as the seventh, fifth, third, and fourth users all sensed the same shift. The first user of One for One felt it deep in the bones of the vestige world. Something was moving, the connection between One for One and All for One was splitting and becoming blurrier. From that blur two new links formed, a quirk that looked like the perfect mirror image of All for One, and a markedly weaker variant of the All for One quirk. Okay, that's new, didn't expect that, but I think we'll have company soon. Be ready, Yoichi Shigaraki said as a fleeting presence became perceptible, peering into the vestige world on that strange passage. Even as Yoichi's gaze fell on the figure that seemed to form from rainbow-colored light, he couldn't for the life of him tell who or what it was. It was at the same time a vestige and something else, the vestige of someone still alive. Something intrinsically contradictory. No words were spoken as the rainbow figure stood there and looked around with eyes that did not exist. A shape in constant flux, and then it popped like a soap bubble on a pin. What the hell was that? Who or what took the connection to reach us? The third user asked. I don't know either what that was, but it was definitely a vestige like us, and yet somehow also the vestige of someone still alive, Yoichi said, looking toward the golden indistinct form of the eighth user, Tashinori Yagi, the current user of One for All Might, who seemed to have perceived at least a portion of what had occurred. What does all of this mean? Why is there suddenly more than one connection to One for All? The second user asked. I don't know, but something changed, and it will ripple through the world. It's just like when OFA was created by accident. It has something to do with the rainbows. And we can't just sit here waiting for those rainbows to turn everything upside down again, Yoichi Shigaraki said, unnerved by what the pure, chaotic power of those rainbow phenomena might bring. It was exactly that uncertainty that made his non-existent heart beat faster. A few minutes earlier in Musudafu, a blond man walks through the streets, dark, deeply sunken eyes in a frame that looks almost skeletal, as if a gust of wind might blow him over, a white bag of groceries in one hand and a phone pressed to his ear with the other. Toshinori Yagi, I told you to be home by 10. If you're not back with the groceries in half an hour, there's no lunch for you. Says a female voice on the phone. The voice belongs to one of the few people on the planet who can make All Might tremble, his wife. For Toshinori, there are only a handful of people he truly respects or fears, and even fewer who don't need a quirk to unnerve him. Among them is the woman on the other end of the line, who can reduce him to a flustered mess with nothing more than a steely look. Yeah, sweetheart, I'm hurrying. There was an incident. Toshinori says, his heart beating faster, hoping she won't get angry again. An incident, my ass. There are other heroes in town. You can take a few minutes to yourself. Hurry up, I'm not going to stand in the kitchen forever. She warns with a tone that freezes the blood in his veins. Shit, she means it. I don't want to have to go get food from that little shop next door. I'd only make her angrier if I didn't bring her home-cooked food. Toshinori thinks. Then something hits him like a punch, a sense that something is wrong, something deeper than pain or injury, something strange, different. Almost as if something deeper than bone, blood and matter has shifted. Something that, at best, feels confusing and at worst looks like pure chaotic rule breaking. Suddenly, without warning, a flickering image appears, blurred but sharp enough to see a figure made of rainbow-colored light, constantly shifting. As quickly as it appeared, it's gone. What the hell was that? How did that happen? Toshinori asks himself as the world seems to tilt and something changes. A path that once ran between 2 points splits into several directions, 3 houses now connected to a road that wasn't there before. Okay, what is this? Am I hallucinating because I've been overworking lately? No, I've never had hallucinations. I've never been pushed so far that I see illusions, so what is this? Toshinori asks himself. Just when he thinks it's over, the oddness continues, the whispering that's been stalking him for days becomes clearer. Even if Toshinori might call it a quirk causing the strange susurrus, it's far too spontaneous, unmotivated and useless for a villain to use as an attack. Okay, now this is really creepy. I don't get the impression these whispers are coming from outside. Why do I feel like they're coming from inside me? What is that? He wonders as he reaches his apartment and steps inside. I think the 8th user can hear us, so we should probably talk here less often. Says a clear voice, one that hadn't been distinguishable among the indistinct murmurs until now. What was that just now? Toshinori asks as he steps into the apartment that has long been his home. For a man known as the #1 hero, the house is unexpectedly modest, nothing that screams the wealth that might be hidden behind the family name. It's a fairly average place, giving little hint of the life it shelters. Well, there you are at last. I was wondering when you'd arrive. Hurry up, we have a guest. Nina says with a smile as her head appears from the kitchen. Why would we have a guest? I hardly ever have guests. Toshinori thinks as his gaze sweeps down the empty hallway. Then he notices 2 shoes he didn't expect, black, elegant shoes suggesting someone who cares about appearance. At the same time, the smell of tomato sauce, garlic and spices drifts through the corridor. I wonder what those voices are, but it's not like I'll find answers now. I couldn't find them yesterday, and whatever I've tried, it's not a quirk externally influencing me, so I'll have to focus on this visitor. I wonder what they want from me. Toshinori thinks as he walks across the freshly cleaned floor. And then it happens as if the world is conspiring against him every time he freshly cleans the floor suddenly becomes slipperier. But two strong arms catch him, surprisingly powerful. Whoa, you almost fell, Mr. Toshinori. Glad nothing worse happened. Says a young woman who looks maybe 20. Her skin is a deep violet with an almost oily sheen, her white hair falling to her shoulders, and her gentle expression suggests she's the guest Nina mentioned. Thank you. Toshinori says politely as he steadies himself. For a second she stands a beat too long, holding on a moment too tightly. There's something in those almost golden eyes that doesn't quite match the soft face. No matter how long Toshinori studies her, he can't quite place it, a glint of calculation and coldness hidden just beneath the surface. Excuse me, you look familiar. Have we met somewhere before? Toshinori asks. Not that I know of. However, you may have seen me before. I work for the newly founded company Horizon that's been getting so much criticism from the Hero Association lately. I work very close to the top and could therefore have appeared in photos you've seen, or at press conferences, the stranger replies. Okay, that's a bit unexpected, but why are you here, if I may be so direct? Toshinori Yagi asks, raising an eyebrow as an uneasy feeling spreads through his chest. It's nothing special, just a small warning, an offer, and a message I was told to deliver to you. But shall we sit down somewhere before we get to the more serious topics? The still unknown woman says with a friendly, calming smile, as if nothing that could happen now could escape her control, as if it were all foreseen. They sit at a low wooden table in the heart of a modest Japanese living room. The faint scent of green tea drifts through the air, mingling with the soft ticking of a wall clock. Sunlight filters through thin paper shoji screens, painting faint lattice patterns on the tatami mats. The room is quiet, too quiet, except for the whisper of a breeze that brushes against the half-open window. It's precisely the deep calm that makes Toshinori nervous. An unexpected visitor in a place like this, where hardly anyone comes except his closest friends, is odd. You can relax, All Might's secretary. I'm not here to hurt him or anyone else. Oh, my head's a mess, I never introduced myself. My name is Luna Snow, and I'm here, as I said, to hand you a letter, issue a warning, and offer a little help, because you could really use it, Luna Snow says, giving her most soothing smile to the thin, unremarkable man sitting opposite her. And what makes you assume that I need your help? Toshinori Yagi replies, a little too blunt and a touch rude, it comes out harsher than he meant. I intend no offense, but I think you aren't the best secretary for All Might if you hardly ever appear beside him. Not that I wish to criticize, but it could become problematic if uncomfortable questions are asked. What does a secretary do who is never seen working? I don't want to endanger you or make you an enemy. I'm personally a supporter of this world's order, which is why a symbol of peace is necessary, but that becomes difficult when the symbol of peace is never seen buying food or walking in public. Some thoughts naturally arise. Perhaps there's a quirk that changes appearances. Maybe someone near All Might can alter how he looks. Or perhaps All Might's quirk involves transformation. I'm here to warn you, those close to All Might may become targets. Villains may realize that direct combat won't work and instead look toward those who know his civilian identity. Friends, sidekicks, there are many ways to find such things out. I'm not advocating it, of course. Think of this as a friendly warning from someone who values All Might's existence. It's troublesome that you're so directly connected to him. Be cautious. I don't say someone will abduct you to force your silence, but it could happen. Maybe someone could have a quirk that changes appearances every day. In this society, you can never say never. And that hero registry, check whether your quirk is listed there. If it is, that knowledge could leak from within the Hero Association. Infiltration and such. I think we both prefer to avoid that, Luna Snow says in a calm, almost analytical tone, as though discussing an experiment rather than a person's life. As Toshinori Yagi looks at the unassuming, lilac-skinned young woman across from him, he feels his blood run cold. It isn't obvious what she hasn't said, but it's as clear as glass that there's more behind this than a simple warning about those close to All Might. The stillness in her expression, the subtle glint of calculation in her eyes, it's not her power that makes her dangerous, but her intellect. If she were merely a theorist with wild ideas, he could dismiss her. But this young woman has almost effortlessly brushed against Japan's most carefully guarded secret, and that's terrifying. What exactly do you intend to do with this information? What's your purpose in coming here? Toshinori asks, uncertain how to navigate the situation. Questioning isn't a crime, nor is identifying flaws in the system, so technically nothing she's doing is illegal, yet it's profoundly unsettling. For Toshinori Yagi, the small table between them suddenly feels more than a boundary. It feels like a fragile wall separating his peaceful life from the chaos that could follow if she pushed just a little harder. I don't want much, like I said. I was sent to deliver you a letter and to prevent this world from falling into complete chaos if certain villains ever decide to use their heads instead of repeating their old mistakes. If I were a villain, I'd take a few steps to uncover All Might's secret identity and weaken him indirectly. Since no villain could survive a direct confrontation with him, I'd instead target those around him, his allies, his friends, anyone who knows him. I'm not promoting that idea, of course. Think of this as a warning from someone who considers All Might vital to society. Be careful. Someone could try to abduct you or pressure you. And check the hero registry. If your quirk is listed, someone within the association could leak it. We wouldn't want that. Luna Snow finishes, still smiling as she raises her teacup and takes a delicate sip. For a moment the only sounds in the room are the faint clink of porcelain and the distant hum of the city outside. The calm with which Luna sits there makes Toshinori wonder whether she truly doesn't know who he is, or whether she's so composed because she knows she has nothing to fear. Why is she so calm? Does she expect me to ignore this? Does she think she can simply appear here and speak like this without consequence? Or, does she really not realize who I am? Toshinori thinks, his mind circling restlessly. No matter how much he turns it over, the questions pile up like a rising tide threatening to wash away the fragile peace he's built. When sunlight filters through the shoji again, the scene almost looks tranquil. But the tension, sharp enough to cut, doesn't touch Luna Snow as she takes another unhurried sip of tea. That's exactly what I meant, she says quietly, her voice carrying both concern and something sharper, something unspoken. I want precisely what I said. Think ahead, it works wonders, especially for someone close to the number one hero. Since I don't know who All Might truly is, I want you to warn him personally. I don't wish to find him myself. It would be inconvenient to approach him directly about his mediocre concealment, or worse, to expose him. The government and the association would spiral into paranoia. I don't need that. So I'm telling you. And who knows, maybe All Might would decide to lock me up for asking the wrong questions. Anyway, that's my warning and my advice. I just want to draw your attention to a few things, Luna Snow says. And what should convince me you're telling the truth and not threatening me? Toshinori asks in his civilian tone, more composed now but no less tense. It's simple, think logically. If I wanted to harm you, would I be foolish enough to come here and tell you my reasoning? I'd sell my knowledge to the highest bidder. It makes no statistical sense to come here, lie to you, and risk myself when I could do it indirectly. I could send threats or use other means, yet I haven't. That alone should suffice as proof of my non-hostility. If I were your enemy, we wouldn't be having this conversation, Luna replies, her voice clear, level, and utterly rational. As silence settles, Toshinori Yagi feels as though he's trapped in a battle without blows or blood, a war waged entirely in words. And for the first time, it's a fight he knows he cannot win. This was a battle lost before it began, where strength, speed, and power mean nothing against the quiet precision of intellect.
And that's it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and please share my channel with your friends, it really helps a lot. If you click on the left side of the screen, you'll be taken to the latest video I've uploaded. On the right side, you'll find a link to the full playlist. And right in the middle at the top of the screen, you can click to visit my YouTube channel. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to hear more of this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. That's all for today. See you next time, and goodbye.